Everyone, call to order the Thursday, April 10th meeting of the Economic Development Commission. Looking at our minutes, we're good to, Tony, we're good to, with a quorum, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Our first point on our agenda is approval of the minutes from March 13th, if everyone had a chance to review those. Okay. Entertain a motion. Thank you. Scott? Second?
I'll second.
Steve? Any discussion? No. All in favor? Okay. Great. Moving on to our third note, but before we do, I just wanted to make mention, I did send an email to everybody, but if we can just keep Dale Krupp and his family in our thoughts. His mom had passed away today, was the services. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Gary Goodrich from Coldwell Banker. And Gary, if you'd like to give us a little of your background and then dive right in.
Sure. Again, my name's Gary Goodrich. I'm with Coldwell Banker Commercial. I come from a background of project management for about 20 years with an investment banking firm, and I've been with Coldwell Banker for a little over 6 years now. Resident of New Haven, Westfield in particular, for over 35 years. So.
Okay. And the program that you came here to talk to us about, that Coldwell Commercial is using, it's called the Artificial Intelligence Program.
Correct, Place
So,
AI. So
there you
Coldwell
go.
Banker is a full-service commercial brokerage, and that covers retail, office, landlord, and tenant representation, land sales acquisition, multifamily sales and acquisition. One of the services that we provide is our research analytics team. And the tool that they use, or one of the many tools that they use, is Place AI. Place AI it's the leading location analytics platform. And what it does, it helps businesses identify customer behaviors and their buying patterns. This is done through, it's done through what they call foot traffic analysis. And they analyze foot traffic analysis by mobile location data. It is anonymous. So they don't know Gary Goodrich is walking into CVS. They know a visitor walked into CVS, whether it's 10, 100, 1,000, over a specific period of time. And I just want to go to the next slide, or the next page on the presentation. What we've been doing, we've been talking to economic development directors in the various towns in Connecticut. Just going back a little, Place AI is new as far as partnering with Coldwell Banker Commercial. So we're just rolling this out, and it's my initiative to talk to economic development directors in the state of Connecticut. The first slide is a challenge that I had with the economic development director in West Haven. They were looking for an additional supermarket, whether or not it would work. So what we did is that we used Place AI to analyze some of the supermarkets in the surrounding towns and see how many are going to, let's say, Stop and Shop in one location, or another Stop and Shop, or an Aldi's, or a ShopRite. And again, Place AI can see that by their cell phone data location. So yes, Big Brother is always watching you.
So when you say it's anonymized, do they break it down by demographic at all?
It can be broken down by demographics. That includes education, income.
Male, female?
Ethnicity. It's pretty amazing the kind of data that they can they can provide.
This is based on the cellular data? That's
It's based on,
cellular-
well, it's based on cellular data, but they also have access to the demographics. There are a bunch of algorithms that's above my pay grade as far as actually explaining what they actually do to get that data, but it all derives from the cell phone location data.
And all cell phone users are using it, so no one's excluded from it, so every T-Mobile, everyone's using it?
Yes. So, and as I said, it's pretty interesting, to say the least. But from a commercial end, businesses can now see, or economic development directors can see in a town what's going on in this town, as far as what kind of businesses are actually going through the town or visiting different commercial businesses. Okay? And so in this particular example, as I said, he was interested in an additional supermarket. So he wanted to see what's going on as far as the amount of traffic or the amount of visitors going to the surrounding supermarkets. And as I said, it's not just the visitors that they can track, but they also, as I said, as you just mentioned, they can also see household incomes, the demographic data.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So they could tell what someone's education level is based on the cellular data?
Based on the cellular data, they have a way, as I said, they have a way of matching whoever the users are with the, as I said, the demographics of the user. That's, as I said, how they do it exactly.
They're
That's,
probably using it with spending patterns and such, so like my cell data would be very different than Cliff's cell data.
yeah,
Right, and so based on where I'm spending, how I'm spending, what I'm spending, they probably put a bunch of different things in there to break out where, like, what I would do versus what Cliff would do. I don't know how they would have college level data from a mobile phone.
Well,
Right,
they
'cause
have your name, they have your address, and you may be able to access other records through
But that's PII, that's privacy, so I don't know how they would be doing
Yeah,
that.
I think we're getting into
It doesn't matter,
stuff that
it doesn't matter,
Caldwell has no
it doesn't
control
matter,
over.
it doesn't matter.
exactly.
I think
This is
Verizon,
interesting.
T-Mobile, it is.
Yeah.
Verizon,
It-
T-Mobile, those guys should be questioned as to how
Yeah,
Yeah.
its
Well,
information is getting collected.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
All right, just going to the next page. It gets even more interesting once we go through the presentation. On the next page, on page 3, is what they call a heat map. So not only can they identify who's going to a specific, let's say in this case a supermarket location, they can see where they're coming from geographically. And in this particular instance, you can see in bright orange, most of it is coming locally, but they can see as far as geographically where they're actually coming from further distances.
So, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand that. So if we were tracking a store in Woodbridge,
Correct.
we can find out where those customers are coming
Correct.
from. Okay.
Exactly. So on the next page, in this case, not only can they track the geographical locations, they can track where they're actually coming from as far as where they come from home, work, if they came from Walmart, CVS, Aldi's. They can not only analyze that, but they can see where they're going to once they leave. In this case, Stop and Shop. They can see whether or not they left and went to work, or they went home, or CVS, Walgreens, or Walmart. So the data is pretty extensive as far as what they can actually analyze.
So it's an average over that?
Yeah,
January
it's an aggregate. So yeah, it's a total of, as I said, it's not tracking, as I said, Gary Goodrich going. It's tracking just the data, just the movement of the cell phone data. They can also, on the next page, page 5, they can actually look at the streets that they came down. So in this case, let's say the Stop and Shop. They can see how many have come to Stop and Shop down 69 or 63 or came up Wheelie Ave. So they can actually track that. Now, on the next page, page 6, there are a couple of features I just want to mention. One is void analysis, and the other is site selection. What void analysis does, it analyzes an unmet demand in a specific geographic location. So, let's take this. Well, before we even look at this example, let's say the Citizens Bank, okay, it's vacant. So based on the demographics, based on the foot traffic patterns, based on the income, they can look at one location and then come up with suggestions as far as the type of business that might fit for the Citizens Bank or any other, retail establishment. And, as I said, it's just data. It doesn't say that it would automatically work there, but they're basing it on statistical data around the country. In this case, this is village of Fox Lake. They're in Illinois, and it's a location where there are a number of lakes in the area, and the economic development director wanted to bring commercial development in this area. And so they haven't had commercial development in over 40 years. So using Place of AI, they looked at other locations, similar demographics, similar foot traffic patterns, similar spending patterns, and they used this data to then go out to hotels or any kind of establishments, commercial establishments, to say, hey, we have the traffic here, and we have the type of clientele that would fit in this location, and then seek them out. I looked them up actually, and actually I know that they have developed an amphitheater, and that's one of the businesses that they mentioned in the case study. Another analysis on the next page is site selection. Now, site selection, you're analyzing a chain, whether it's a regional chain or a national chain, to see if that chain would fit in a particular location. I.e., let's say the Flats, you wanted to bring in, we'd like to bring in, let's say, a national chain or some type of regional chain in that area. Well, using Place of AI, we can look at a chain to see, and you might have a suggestion as far as the type of chain. We can look at that and say, okay, that chain's demographics, have a certain demographics. Do they fit in this location? Okay, and so they're not going to say yes or no, but they're going to give you some type of analysis whether it would work or not. In this particular case, the National Harbor, the developers there, Patterson Companies, they wanted to bring a regional chain in there called Silver Diner. And so Silver Diner had a number of locations, and they wanted to have an argument for it fitting in National Harbor. So what they did is they used Place of AI, and they looked at the demographics, the foot traffic patterns, spending habits in this location to see if it would work in National Harbor. And when I looked them up, Silver Diner is now in National Harbor. And they use Place of AI as one of the features as far as to justify them moving, or at least adding another chain to their location. So, in general, what I'm doing, and I've talked to a number of economic developers around the state, is that instead of the traditional agent who just sees a location and then brings in a buyer or brings in a tenant, and then maybe comes to the town later, okay? I've been going to the town and presenting them with Placer AI and say, we can give you this data and ask you what your needs and wants are for the town. We, as Caldwell Banker agents, that's all we deal with is we work with buyers, sellers, investors, developers. We can then find those businesses to bring them there, to bring them to whatever town that we're working with. So we're doing it in reverse. We're asking you, hey, what do you need? What would you like to see, in Woodbridge? What would you like to see in New Haven or Berlin? Instead of just finding an empty, let's say, retail spot or a vacant piece of land and then bringing in a developer. So we're looking to see what do you need as far as, are you looking for housing? Do you want a national retailer? And so we're doing it in a reverse order to find out what the town needs instead of bringing in a business and finding out whether or not they want us or not, basically.
Sure. Is this service free?
This is free.
Okay.
Okay. Placer AI, it's a service that we provide. Obviously, what we're looking for the transaction. Okay. So Caldwell Banker, we facilitate between a buyer and a seller or a landlord and tenant. That's how we generate our revenue. And this is just part of the service that we provide.
And will Placer AI, as it digests all the data, well, let's say we recommend you look at putting in X type of business
Yeah, they'll
in
have
this
it.
location.
Right. Do void analysis. They'll have some recommendations of the type of business that might fit in this location based on the data from other locations that are similar. So yeah, we will have suggestions either on a regional basis or a national basis as far as that type of business.
When, I don't want to get too far ahead, but when we did have a meeting with the folks from Connecticut Main Street Center, we did a walk around down in the business district.
Yep.
And when we were walking, we were looking at vacancies that are there, which there are a number of them. This came up, and the idea of, instead of just having the broker bring anybody in to fill one of these spots, if when we're talking about placemaking and we're talking about designing or creating quote unquote Main Street or a downtown area, this is exactly what these folks suggest that you do, is instead of just filling it with anything, looking at what don't we have and what could work here. So I mentioned to them very briefly, and they had a little bit of knowledge about it, not too much.
I spoke to them.
You did? Perfect.
Yeah, Michelle McCabe. I did speak with her and had a presentation with her.
Great.
So they were familiar with it. They became familiar with it. They were obviously very impressed by it.
Yeah, and I think that certainly when we move forward with any of those programs, that this is something that could help us.
Yeah, it's, as I said, it's fairly new as far as the technology, and it's usually not presented in this way. But we found that there is a need because there's a separation between what a town needs and what a business is looking for. And what we're trying to do, we being Caldwell Banker Commercial, is trying to bridge that gap. The data is nice. It's nice. This is very impressive. But there's an implementation part of it. And that's what we're here, that's what Caldwell Banker Commercial does. We want to implement it, okay? Because if it's just data, then it's just data. Okay, looks nice, cool,
Right.
but we need to implement it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Great.
Gary, can you explain a little bit more about, I'm not quite sure I'm understanding void analysis. Sorry. Gary, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure I understand void analysis or
sure.
unmet demand. Are you looking at, I'm thinking some of the things we have to think about is when we come up with an economic development plan is what changes do we need to make? There could be zoning changes, all sorts of things. Can that help us sort of understand what, because we may not have a lot of data that we capture today that are walking in. We just don't have that. So we need to model it somehow, either prospectively or from other communities or from communities that are outside of our immediate area. And I'm just wondering how void analysis is actually driving
Well,
that.
it can, okay, because it does do, it's not just analyzing foot traffic patterns, it's also analyzing demographics, not just people demographics, but also businesses. Whether it's retail, whether it's warehouse, industrial. They can do all those analysis, which would help you as far as, making those type of, help you with some of those recommendations as far as zoning and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it can help in that aspect also. And this is one of many tools. As I said, Placer AI is one of the tools that we use, but we also have other demographic tools that are also married into this. So it's not just one tool. It would be a number of analytics that we can provide, to help with that.
And would the EDC or the town in general have to engage contractually with you to get access to some of this information?
No. The short answer is no. I mean, we would like to be the broker of record as on a business relation, but not anything contractually.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, I would like a call. Hey, Gary, we need a spot, But it's nothing as far as contractually.
Okay.
All right.
Are you also working with the planning communities?
I have not, and it's something that I will be venturing into, because I can see that there would also be a need for them also with this kind of technology. So yeah, that's it's funny you brought that up, because that was brought to me with another economic director, that I should start speaking to planning and zoning committees.
Gary, is Placer AI a Caldwell Banker product,
No.
or is it something you
It's
guys?
a separate, right. So what will happen is that it's a separate company, okay? There are Placer AI salespeople out there, okay? So, and if you just want to get Placer AI alone, it's very expensive. As you can imagine, this is a lot of data, and it's very expensive to access this data or get this data. And so they, as sales agents, they are going to different towns and talking to economic development committees about their service. We can offer it as a service as part of Caldwell Banker Commercial. It's just that, as I said, we're looking for the transaction, the second half, okay? Not just providing data.
What a great tool. What a great tool.
How long has the tool been around?
They've been around since 2016, the company. There are other companies out there. I mean, there are other competitors, but they're one of the leaders. They're probably the forefront of this type of technology. And as I said, it's pretty amazing. And I made one presentation, and the person wanted to shut his cell phone off. I said, yeah. It's too late.
Makes you think, that's for sure.
Right. No, exactly.
Staying in the revolving door, going 100 cycles. Okay, now 100 people entered today and left real quick.
Gary, I'm sorry, going back to the data that's available to them, are they getting a percentage of cellular data, or are they getting, let me ask, what percentage of cellular data are they getting to support this tool?
That I'm not sure. I mean, most of the cell phone data, cellular data, is cell phones, but you have tablets, laptops. I mean, you have others. So I'm sure they're getting data that way also.
The reason I ask is if I'm looking at this data, I'd like to understand that it represents a certain percentage of our population, and it's accurate enough to give us a good understanding of what we're seeing in terms of traffic.
Right. Because obviously, everyone doesn't have a cell phone. Most people do. Yeah. A lot of kids might not have them. So, I mean, it's not 100%, accurate. It's not quote unquote gospel.
Well,
It's,
and that's why I asked before if all cell phone partners are being used in this. Because, for example, T-Mobile is a much younger demographic for cell phone users. So if this is all T-Mobile data, I wouldn't trust it for our town, right? Because I think we'd be more Verizon and AT&T subscribers, just going after the customers that they're going after. So if this was all dominant T-Mobile, I think that the data would be skewed. That's why
Yeah,
I
so-
asked that question before.
right. I don't think they're pulling it, they're pulling total, just cell phone data or mobile location data, period. It's not specific to specific carriers.
Right.
So they could
Okay.
be getting a variety of.
But that's what I would assume, yeah. Because if certain ones were carved out, I think that would skew the data.
Right.
And being that our town is specific, I think our town it's a higher economic area, I think we would be just in a different world. And like, if it was T-Mobile, it would not work for this area.
Right.
Only. Is my point.
If you were looking, let's say as an example, Selden Plaza, so where the bowling alley is, would you have to, put the pin in the bowling alley to see specifics, or could you look at that general area, that Selden Plaza, Amity Road, or our business district in general, to see where are these cars coming from, or do you have to really kind of
No,
pinpoint
you don't have to
the spot?
pinpoint it. You can look at the city. You can look
You
at,
can.
let's say, New Haven. Who's coming into New Haven? Who's leaving New Haven? Where are they going when they leave New Haven? Where are they coming from when they go to New Haven? So it can be as specific as one location, but as wide as a city.
Okay. That's impressive to me.
Yeah. So we. Sorry.
So let's say we're looking at, someone mentioned Citizen Bank at 194 Amity Road.
Yep.
Right, so we're looking at 194 Amity Road and we're thinking like, what would be a good fit for that empty building? It was a Ponderosa years ago, it was a chiropractor and a bank subsequently, most recently. So now we're showing what's gonna work there. Do you have to, though, in this process, look at the other empty buildings in the area? Like, what drives that decision to determine what is an appropriate business that might work in that specific location?
Well, again, in this case, this would be board analysis, okay? You have an unmet demand in a specific location being Citizens Bank. So it's gonna look at similar demographics. It could be in Connecticut, it could be California. And they will then give you suggestions.
Right.
It's the type of business that might fit in that specific location. What type of, let's say, maybe a regional chain or a national chain, or just a general idea as far as the type of business that might work in that area. It might not be the only business that might work, but it will give you suggestions as far as the type of business.
Yeah. So in that area, I'm just trying to envision this. So we have like 6 or 7 empty businesses right now. Does this actually take all that into account as well? Like to try to plot out like what works cohesively among those buildings?
It can do that also. So, give you an
Interesting.
example. Let's say you wanted a fitness center. Let's say it was a fitness center. It'll not only give you suggestions as far as a fitness center, but what other type of business works well around fitness centers?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a vitamin store,
Mhm.
Some type of health store.
Yeah.
And so it will give you those suggestions.
Well, going back to your date on I think it was the first slide where it was Stop and Shop.
Mhm.
What was it? Maybe that was this one. Where it's like Stop and Shop was in the middle, right? And so you could, I would say, deduce from this that if they're going from Stop and Shop to pharmacies or to Walmart, I would make the assumption that next to a Stop and Shop should be pharmacies and Walmart and other things. Is that fair to make that
Yeah,
assumption?
let's say there was a Stop and Shop, but it didn't have a CVS anywhere near there. We'll just do, again, vote
Yeah,
analysis.
yeah.
So, well, maybe there should be a CVS there. Because there are there's other locations, because they're going to a CVS, but people are leaving. Because this is matched, I only use this one side, but there are other slides
Yeah.
with other supermarkets. And let's say the other supermarket didn't have a CVS, But you can see in this one, hey, they're going to CVS when they go there, before they go, and they're going after they go.
Right,
This
because it's
one
before
over here
and
doesn't
after.
have it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so those are some of the, those are just some of the ideas and suggestions that you can have, that you can present to a town. Okay, so a town would be looking for what's, as I said, your needs and wants. I talked to one town, they need urgent care. They don't have any urgent care. When he was taking me around, it was just noticeable, he didn't need all this to see that. But then we can run Placer AI to see, okay, what type of urgent care do you need here? What kind of, maybe a hospital. So it's pretty amazing. You know, the saying, cash is king, but now data is king. You know, data is very expensive. And if someone from Placer AI was speaking to you about their product, it's pricey. It's very pricey.
And Gary, does it also work the other way? Can you put in certain building characteristics and have from that emerge, based upon foot traffic, based upon the data, this type of business might be recommended, or several types of businesses might be recommended?
That I'm not sure. You know, not to give you, I don't want to make something up. I just don't know if that would be feasible or not. So you're saying a business, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, a building that has certain infrastructure characteristics, that has good drainage, has solid power,
Yeah.
approximate size,
That I'm not sure.
perhaps what the historical use has been.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. They would look at that building, and then they would come up with maybe recommendations of the type of business that might fit that.
Yeah.
Not in particular. It might take into account the size, obviously. All right, if you're looking at let's say you're looking at a Citizens Bank, you're not going to come back with a recommendation of Walmart. Okay. So I'm sure that that is taken into account.
And Gary, this will work for more than just retail type stuff?
Yes.
This will work for different segments, manufacturing,
Industry, yeah, manufacturing,
medical,
businesses
that don't have a don't have a storefront where they're selling something.
Exactly.
Services type
Yep.
business will work for all that.
Look for all that.
And can you query neighboring towns and identify what's missing, for lack of a better word?
Yes, you can. That's again. That goes back to
Void
you said
analysis,
about the
yeah.
void analysis. What's missing? What business? What's missing from what unmet demand? There's a demand there, but it's just not being met, and then we can analyze that. Our Placer AI can analyze that and then give you suggestions as far as what might fit there. So it's impressive.
Yeah.
You know, it is. And as I said, Michelle, she's looking for case studies. Okay. And so I'm looking for case studies, that I can present to Michelle. So this is why Mika was very impressed when I talked to Mika about it. And this is why he asked me to, attend the meeting.
How does your license work with Placer AI in terms of Caldwell Banker's license? Is it, sort of sub-licensable, or is that always done through a Caldwell licensee in doing some of that prompting, if you will, with Placer AI? Like, it's all done through Caldwell Banker, or?
It's all done through Caldwell Banker.
So
we have our own
You,
research.
Gary, for instance, would hold that license and actually work with the town if we had a sort of a project that we wanted to sort of test, get
there's
some
no-
information from.
Well, there's no license involved. I mean,
Yep.
to break that even further, let's say I was a residential agent. Just the way they present comparative market analysis, all right, on the commercial side, this is what we can present. So
It's part of your sales toolbox.
it's part of the sales tool, pretty
It's part of
much.
the sales toolbox.
We have a research analytics team. I'm not the one running the reports. I'm presenting whatever someone's needs and wants are, and then presenting it to the research analytics team and said, hey, can you run reports on this?
Is that Connecticut or is that
It's national.
it's national?
It's a national. So they work across the country. And it's great because then they can give examples of case studies around the country. The two particular case studies, these are Placer AI case studies that I looked up. That's on their website that they gave as examples. And as I said, I checked out the National Harbor, and Silver Diner is now in National Harbor, and it's in National Harbor because part of the basis was using Placer AI to look at those demographics there, foot traffic patterns, based on their other locations that was similar.
Have you played around with it for our area, just to kind of see?
Well, I played around, not
That's what I would.
not
I'm at the keys.
I'm like, I'm in
keys, I'm at the
sales, so I'm
keys.
kind of
Yeah,
like, I'd be
yeah.
playing around to kind of see what I was pitching, right?
not in Woodbridge. I played around in New Haven, West Haven, but not in Woodbridge in particular.
Any interesting findings from from the data? Or
Well,
that
it's
you've seen that
kind
you
of
were surprised by?
amazing. Well, when I was looking at the supermarkets, when I use it
Yeah.
as an example, I was surprised how far people will drive to a supermarket. I was pretty impressed. I also did one in a town, and they were looking to add a sports center, and so I looked at other sports centers and where they travel. It's an indoor sports center they wanted to develop on 54 acres. It's amazing how far people will travel to sports centers. But then when you have kids like I had that were into sports, we travel to Timbuktu, for those AAU events and
Yep.
everything else. And so we can actually show the data as far as how far they're actually traveling. And that will then support whether or not they want to develop a sports center in this particular town.
It's interesting.
I certainly would like to look into this, a little bit further with you as we kind of progress with our plans,
Yeah.
especially within the business district, and see where we can go once we kind of get an idea of kind of our vision. Go from there.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. And as I said, I can help. It's even giving suggestions. It doesn't have to be, okay, we decided on this, call Gary. While you're thinking about what you're doing, I could provide some type of reports to help that out.
Great.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I remember in my earlier days when I was still working, like you used to have to get those paper reports. I'd be doing a lease, and whether you'd have a Stop and Shop and you're going to renew with them, they'd threaten they could move somewhere else. You'd say, well, let's see, and then you have a consultant come in and sort of try to figure out would they move and how far they could move and with all that kind of stuff. And now you just prompt it in and. They're smoking you out. Let's stay with the lease payment. They're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, the reason why economic development directors have been very impressed with this is that they're usually going outside to find consultants to provide this data and paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so that's why they've been really impressed.
Just order paper reports.
Gary, a couple more questions.
Sure.
Will Placer AI give you a percentage of probability of success for a particular business or particular businesses, like high to low probability of success in a particular
As far as
location?
success, no, because there's so many variables, and that's just how the business is going to be run.
But that type of business, a
Select,
CVS, or do you want to put a hotel here or
Well,
a sports
yes.
complex there?
Well, that's-
will it say based on the traffic, there is a high probability that this has a good chance of succeeding in this location? Kind of
Yeah, exactly. No, it will. As I said, it will look at the analysis. There's a CVS over here. There's nothing over here. They look at the demographics. They look at the foot traffic, spending patterns, and then they would now say, yeah, a CVS could go there, or some let's say Dollar General, whatever.
And how about housing? I know it's different than what we normally talk about in EDC, but people drive economic development. Will the tool support a discussion that says if you bring in X number of people versus, this type of housing, single, double, triple family, whatever type housing, will it go that far?
Housing is that's a good question in regards to housing. Let's take, for an example, Steel Point, okay? Remember Steel Point?
Bridgeport, it's finally going, right?
It's going.
It's going,
Okay.
finally, 30,
We
20
use
years
that one,
later.
let's use that one for an example. You have over 400 units being developed there, okay? That's a huge economic base. Well, we can use Place AI and look at another development somewhere around the country, 400 or 500 units. What kind of economic development goes on? What kind of stores are needed? What kind of businesses needed to support that? And so, in that case, that's how it can be analyzed. So you can look at the driving force of, hey, you have this economic base being the housing and the people living there. Now, what kind of businesses will actually fit for that? So, yeah, it can work in that aspect also.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking you could look at other areas that have, like you say, Steel Point, but other areas in which you could say where, when housing was created, then look at those cellular traffic and saying, okay, this will result from that. And then you can probably just scale it to like 20 different communities to say this was, and then you start to get a real feel for what will happen rather than just
Because we have
an observation or somebody.
significant town project that could benefit from that discussion.
And then it would inform on the zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Even on a more granular level, let's say you have mixed use, okay? 6-10 units above, retail on the bottom. We can then look at what type of businesses would fit well in that, on the commercial and on the retail end of those stores. So, so yeah, it can work in that aspect.
And that's part of, I think, the part of our 2030 task force is that's one of their ideas or visions for part of that district is bringing in mixed use for just that. If you look at the pictures, if you will, or images that they've shown, that's what they want to do. And I think that it's going to be a driver for us for economic development side to be able to bring something like that in is going to only help us increase the grand list.
I mean, you have a huge development with Toll Brothers. And so, again, that's an economic base right there. Okay? Do you want them going to New Haven for pizza? Or do you want them staying in the flats to buy something?
Right.
Okay? So those are the kind of things that Place AI will help you with as far as giving you suggestions. That's a perfect example. Is you do have a new economic base that's being developed right now as we speak.
Great.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
an
So-
excellent point.
Wonderful. Gary, thank you for coming and explaining all this to us. We have a lot to digest here.
Yeah, there is a lot to digest. As I said, it's not a one-time thing. You have my card.
Mhm.
I live in Westville, long time. Okay, so it's no problem. As I said, I'm in always direct communication with Mika.
Mhm.
I'm gonna get on him because he's not here, but that's another story.
That's great. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We can move on to our agenda item number 4, update on POCD. There was the workshop on the 8th. I was unable to get there. I don't know if anybody else was able to. Any comments on that? On the 8th, the workshop that they have for the POCD here. Thanks, Steve. It was a presentation.
That was the one that had the boards.
Correct.
and then
Was this Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I briefly looked online to see where we were in the whole program, and after this meeting, they're coming back to Board of Selectmen, TPZ, and there has not been much movement as far as what I've seen to see, like, our section, if you will. I don't know if anybody else had a comment on that. No? Okay.
My understanding, because I did come into the room while they were here, is that that will be the last open house.
Mhm.
And the next will be a draft of the POCD. So that seems to be the next step.
Excuse me. Next item is CT Main Street update. We had our preliminary meeting with Michelle McCabe, who's the executive director. Kristen Lopez came. They kind of outlined the program. Tony sent the PowerPoint out to everybody back on April 3rd. In that preliminary meeting, it included Chris Dickerson from 2030, myself, Mika, Dale Krupp. Peter Palumbo was kind of a business representative. He's from Crest. Tony Genovese and Chris Sullivan, they went through their kind of step-by-step process that they work on. The next step is to meet with Carl Rosa, who's the development coordinator, I think is his title. He's going to be meeting with us to do this initial assessment. That's the 85 data point question and answer. It's about 2.5 to 3 hour long appointment, whereas he's going to go through and ask us, all these different data points that we have to answer, and they will come back with us with that initial assessment. And it's a starting point to see where we're going. That first meeting, they ask that it's done in a limited work group that would include Chris Dickerson from 2030, Mika, perhaps Dale, myself for the first initial assessment. Then from there, once we get the assessment back, what they ask for is us to form a committee, if you will, that's going to work with them to kind of develop further out what our vision is for the Main Street area. And this is all going to be in conjunction with 2030 for now. And I think the ultimate plan is for 2030 at some point in the future to kind of pass this whole plan off to EDC to run with. After we had the meeting and introductory session here, we did walk down from Crest. We went through Selden Plaza. We walked up to Bradley Road, down Bradley to Litchfield, and then up Lucy Street. And what they said to us afterwards, we kind of just stood around the parking lot for a few minutes, was that they saw definite potential for several different nodes of development. And instead of your, historic downtown Main Street with, businesses and mixed use on both sides of a street, instead of that, because we don't really have that, kind of say, Selden's going to be here, another portion's going to be here, another portion's going to be here off Lucy, and there would be ways to incorporate different things. One thing that they did mention, which I don't know where exactly it could fit, but I hope it could in the future, would be some kind of a green space down there to draw folks into this area, so they would be able to go to one of the restaurants or go to a shop or something such as that. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And that next group will include ourselves, 2030, and then some folks from the business district itself. So we want to see, to the point that Gary was making, what do we need down there, right? As opposed to just trying to fill these vacancies, look at it and say, we could really use X or we could use Y, and go in that direction. I think it's a good starting point for us. And then whoever wants to jump in, they even go further. Once you have this plan in place and you can develop it, now they look at Main Street management, and that's a whole nother tool that they bring to the table. of how to do it, how to fund different things, signage, how to fund maintenance of this area. You know, is it going to be based on the business owners? They even went so far as to suggest once you get something in place, for management purposes, you look into developing some type of non-for-profit who can kind of run with the whole area and take it off of, you know, an economic development commission, or in a town where you have, you know, business districts or special service district, they can work with that. But of course, we're not at that point yet. So very interesting stuff with them.
Clint, was there any discussion on how Woodbridge should think about defining the district for this district? Is it confined, you know, for instance, our grocery store is in New Haven, but it's very close to Woodbridge. And so, you know, what is our business district?
Looking at
See putting that steering committee together, maybe starting that process of thinking about what is the district.
so that
Form on that.
is feeding into, or I should say, maybe the POCD is feeding into that, because portion of that was looking at the business district and looking at, let's say, from the exit 59 interchange up to how far up do you go? So is this district going to include the industrial area off of Lunar Drive, Research Drive, or are we going to go the opposite direction from, let's say, that interchange over to Amity Road and just kind of focus on that? That's one of the things that they are going to assist us with, kind of narrowing down where are we going to try and focus. And because we don't have that quote-unquote main street, they're able to direct us, or so it seems, to be able to combine all different areas into one kind of central area, even though it's not just up and down.
But the business district stops. Can you turn your microphone up again? Sorry. I'm sorry. The business district stops at the town line.
It does. There was some talk about working with, and I think you mentioned it in a previous conversation, with New Haven to see, you know, what can be done up there to kind of improve the whole area, and what could be brought in to kind of develop this into a quote-unquote downtown. So it's, you know, where we go exactly, I don't know.
Yeah,
But-
like our major grocery store is in New Haven, so it's like, can't stop there. You got to sort of think of that as part of the business district.
And
I
they
would think for our
they
district.
did consider the professional buildings along Amity Road
sure,
to be
of course.
within that, and then of course onto Bradley where those office buildings are as well, doctors' offices and so on.
Cliff, how about timeline? Any thoughts on, excuse me, how this begins to take shape? And what's the communication with, I mean, the thing that comes to mind is, you know, town plan and zoning, about some of the steps that might be necessary to, you know, to build this out, to begin to build this out, to make it attractive to, you know, to private capital that might be willing to come in on a project of this nature.
The way that it was explained to us was that once the initial assessment is done, they are going to present their findings to us, and then it's up to us to kind of take some of the guidance that they give us to start developing our plan. Once that's done, they're going to come back on a yearly basis for that, you know, I think very, very small membership fee of $750 that we had to go in. Of course, there's other projects, I guess, that they can jump in on that may have additional fees, but the assessment portion alone, he said, they're going to come back and show you the following year. Here's where you were. Here's where you are now, and you're moving in the right direction, or maybe we have to change direction on something, or slightly move this way or that way.
All right.
They don't give us a hard timeline of when we can expect to, you know, put a shovel in the ground and say, here's Main Street.
But there will be an initial assessment. That assessment can be shared with other bodies within our town government that may be necessary to take action to have this plan come together.
Yes, and my understanding of the assessment, some of the questions deal specific to zoning, specific to just
Right.
well beyond, your economic development
Right.
side. They want to know, where are some restrictions that you have? So it's interesting, and they're going to dive into this more so once you've given them the answers to these questions. I did ask, is there anything that we would receive prior to this assessment to kind of give us an idea, okay, well, we need to find X, Y, and Z? And the answer was no. They said, no, we want you to sit down, give us the answers kind of on the fly, and we go from there.
And the sidewalk project is going to be held in abeyance until we kind of have these very basic building blocks in place.
That is some of the sidewalk program. They're doing some drainage studies right now. That's especially along Bradley to 69.
Right.
And my understanding is next year the sidewalk project is going to begin.
Oh,
So
okay.
there will be, and we're getting a little ahead, but we had talked about in our budget statement that we're going to have a public meeting with, in conjunction with 2030 to kind of discuss this. And this is, when we finalized the walk with Main Street, we walked through Crest, and Mr. Palumbo offered us to use the showroom of Crest for the presentation that will be worked on between 2030 SLR, who's going to actually give the presentation, and then we can, subsidize with any information that we may have or may not have.
Okay.
And Dale is also working with them, kind of in the background, making sure that we're moving in the right direction and we're moving at the pace that we're supposed to be moving on. Although that pace hasn't, I don't believe, been defined.
Okay.
Anything else on that? No, good. Some other updates from the TAC. We had a virtual workshop on the 25th that was prior to the CCW open house that was done in the gym. We forwarded that presentation out. Cooper Robertson made some updates to that, and that was made a presentation last night to the Board of Selectmen. I had not had a chance to watch that today, but I plan to the next day or so, just to kind of see where they are. I know that there were some questions about some costs that are going, depending on option A, B, C, and all the numbers that go along with it. What are some costs associated with each? So it'd be interesting to see that. And I don't know if that had come back, but I believe there's also Tony, maybe you can confirm, a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen with regards to
I
some.
don't know the date. I heard there was some discussion about that, but I do not know that it's been confirmed yet.
Okay.
Special meeting.
Yeah, you're talking about the selectmen's meeting last night? Yeah.
That's when they made
Yeah.
their presentation.
One of the things, I stayed up till the wee hours.
Yeah.
And what I took away from it, if I heard it correctly, was that on the cost-benefit analysis, which was really recognized that we need to do and understand when you choose those options, but that's outside the scope of Cooper Robertson, so that's going to be more of a Goldman and York kind of a, let's think about what our local Woodbridge-based costs are
Okay.
to create that benefit analysis. I think sort of the general cost analysis from Cooper Robinson was put in the slides to the Board of Selectmen, but now you need to run those costs that are local to Woodbridge, school-age children, all those other services that may be involved with the different options.
Right.
That needs to be done outside the scope of work, but done by Goldman and York, so they're gonna be busy.
Yeah.
Goldman and York, yeah.
And I want to say that the timeline on that, for them to come back with the update, if you will, is short. Because each time that they have presented, whether it be to the TAC, whether it be to the Board of Selectmen, they give you a turnaround of maybe a week to review everything and then give any feedback that you might have or questions. I asked a few different questions after the first presentation. Really didn't get the answers. But then one of the slides where they were talking about what could potentially be a strong fit, if you will. And I asked and said, we've researched several towns that are similar size. I said, well, could you give us a breakdown of what towns you looked at? Because Woodbridge, as we all know, is kind of its own animal, right? So if you compared Woodbridge to something that they talk about, Georgetown, that section down in Fairfield County, versus another town that's similar in size up in the northeast corner of the state, it's apples and oranges. So the question hasn't been answered. I'd love to, be able to look at the data that they're giving and say, okay, well, this is actually, congruent to what we're looking at here. But, it's kind of a wait and see. The open house for connectivity, I mentioned that Mr. Palumbo had agreed to have that. Chris Dickerson's going to be working with Dale and Paul DiStefano from SLR to nail down the agenda and then to specify a date. We're also going to be working with Tony on that for some business outreach, and they're compiling a further list of businesses that are down in that district that will ultimately be affected by this construction project.
Okay, so that's where we would step in,
Exactly.
obviously. Yep.
And part of that conversation that we had was that once this list is compiled, we may have to, as members of the EDC, kind of take a portion of the list and make some phone calls. They do have, the town has some interns coming in from the high school. We're going to be assisting with creating this, but it would be on us to kind of make sure that, in fact, business X, you're calling Cliff Lynch, and this is the best number to reach Cliff Lynch at. And why we're going to call Scott? Reach out to the proper person who is a decision maker. So I think that it can only help. As we have said for a long time, we have to communicate with these folks. We can't just go down there and start digging up the road and have them, have a negative, possibly, effect from it. Something else that is under the update, we have, of course, our EDC emails. We've all, most of us, I think, have started to use those. And Tony has sent an email to us on that, so if you didn't, town's asking for us to, you already had yours,
Yep.
so we're good on that. Just for FOIA purposes and so on. That's okay.
It's a lift to get people to stop using it.
Oh, I know.
It's a lift.
hard.
Excuse me, it's this email now?
It's hard.
And then you look at, who's emailing you, and then you have to, kind of backtrack on it and say, please change my contact to X.
And I'm new to Gmail, so it's kind of like a little, the way it operates compared to Outlook. Yeah, it's not quite my Outlook kind of thing.
No. Wait till they start giving you a Google slide and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
We're working on
in
that.
every AI I think there exists.
One additional thing under the chair update. This is something that Kathy Hunter reached out to us from the Housing Committee, and on April 30th, from 6 to 8, the time is still going to be nailed down, but they're going to be holding a meeting entitled Housing Key to Sustainable Growth and Economic Prosperity. She's got a number of speakers. I'm going to be away on the 30th, and Steve is kind of going to be the point person for EDC on this.
Okay.
What it appears as though they're going to have these 4 different folks speak. There's a gentleman, Michael Santoro from Department of Housing, Phoebe Plouffe from LIS, Dale, Economic and Community Resource Management, and David Morgan from Team, which is a company that works with supplying housing within the communities, working with alliances and so on. And Justin from Goldman New York is going to be the facilitator of the meeting. According to these notes, we're going to basically be asked to, whoever can attend, be there for the question and answer period where the folks that are in attendance write a question down. Folks from EDC and housing who are there can collect them, present the cards and the questions to Justin, and he's going to facilitate the answer. So if you're available on that, more information to come. I haven't seen an actual flyer yet, but I'm sure it's coming, and as soon as we get it, we will get it out to you.
This is a public meeting?
It is.
On the 30th.
April 30th at the gym.
And you don't know what time yet?
This says 6 to 8, but there was some back and forth on the time, possibly 6:30 to 8:30. They're still working on an agenda and other suggestions according to the note that we received. Okay. Any questions on that? Unfortunately, I don't have any more information than what I just told you. Next is our business retention. The reach out list we already briefly discussed. Tony's going to be working on that, and this is really going to come into our business retention committee and getting out, kind of shaking hands and actually getting out and doing this job, right? So we can go to different places. They had TPZ had a application come in from Business Down and Research. I didn't follow the entire thing, but be interesting to see exactly what it is that these folks are trying to do, and are they going to be able to do it with the constraints that are already in place? And do we as an EDC at some point make some recommendations to say, well, we need to make some changes here, there, and wherever else in order to kind of facilitate the growth that we're looking for. Under new business, we have Atlas Eye Center. They had their grand opening that was done through the Amity Chamber. That is now up and running as officially the Amity Chamber of Commerce. I was not able to attend, but I know Mika went, and they had some family and friends from the doctor that opened this. Tony, do you have any more information on Atlas?
I don't. I know that there were pictures that circulated that Barry Cohen, I think, included everybody on the commission, and he had a little write-up about the business. So that's
great.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Steve and I attended the ribbon cutting and grand opening last week for the Duck Donut in Orange. They had sent us a kind of an invite on that, see if we were able to go, and our schedules were allowed for it. So it was nice to see, a new business coming in, and Scott Prudhomme was there as representative of the chamber, as he's on their board. So it was nice to catch up with him. And the donuts were very good. So if you happen to be on the Post Road, my daughter doesn't like them warm, but she ate them afterwards, and they were good. So next we have retail pop-up Sherry.
So I've been meeting with the folks next week. We need to make a decision by June if it's something that we want to do. So we need 6 months to implement it. They do need full payment before we kind of even start planning to do something. I think my conversation. Oh, sorry. Usually I'm loud enough. And so again, the way I look at this personally, it's $40,000. It's a lot of money. I think there's a lot of other things we have to accomplish in this town. What I want to talk to them about next week is there a better timing when to do this, right? Is it better when I think it's a great idea. I think it's a fun idea, but I think with everything else going on, I think it's going to get lost. And I do think from a funding perspective, there's a lot of other things that we could put $40,000 towards. And I didn't love the idea that we had to pay them up front to do it. Like, it didn't feel very partnership focused for me. So I'm gonna have a conversation with them next week. I think as we move forward and as the town center, the Main Street kind of gets built, I think that's when would be a better timing to do it, to bring people somewhere. Right now, there's really no place to bring people.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, so I think it's good. I think it's on the back burner. We know what it costs, but I think as we start building and planning, and if there's a green area or something that we're starting to build these little pods, maybe you do something and kind of make it part of that world. And so I think for now it's back burner, but I'm going to continue my conversations with them and kind of keep them warm, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How do we make a decision on this?
Well, I
Is
think the
this
first
something
thing we
we-
have to do is wait for the budget and see if, our request was met. It did go through the selectmen. That was a green light, but
Yeah.
See what Board of Finance comes up with.
Because again, I think too, Mika loves this idea, and I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if it's the right timing
The
right now.
timing, yeah.
I just don't know if it's the right timing, and are we gonna get out of it what we need? Look, would it be great to have a cute little holiday thing on the town, center over here? I think it'd be great, but in the bigger picture of things, I don't know if it's the right time.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Anything else under new business from anybody? No. Okay.
Hey, as I recall, we had on our goals to start to work on an economic development plan, right? And I just wondered sort of where we were on that, or how we can help, how we can participate in that.
I think that once we kind of get by this next, call it month of these assessments and so forth, and see where the town wants to go and have an opportunity maybe for Mika to join us at our next meeting.
Yeah.
To see, can you give us a little bit more of a push, and even working with Justin, who was supposed to be our, consultant, and Dale, and see what direction that we need to move and what is our next step for it. Because I don't think it's ever really been spelled out for us.
Yeah, and like, I'm thinking of the pop-up that you've been, and it may not be the right time, but it may be the right time to figure out where that fits in that, because it could be really a double sort of bang for the buck, where it's a pop-up, but it's also filling another part of the plan, like it's the community contact, or it's the, the event that helps with the lots of grants, community conversation, but without a plan, it's kind of in isolation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think once we can get that, and I don't think it's a stretch to ask for it and give a timeline to these guys and say, listen, we want to get something concrete.
So we can.
And it's workable, of course, nothing is in concrete, but we need to be able to see something and say, this is where we have to go. Because otherwise, what's the point?
So kind of on that point, I want to go back to something we've brought up in the past, and that's establishing the baseline of the town. What our business looks like, what our income looks like, so we can say, here's where we were in 2025, we had X number of businesses, we had X amount of revenue from business versus residential. The EDC took on the goal of increasing that by 10%, just picking a number.
Sure.
And also, identify if we want the mill rate to go from here to here, here's how much we need to bring in additional revenue. That way, there's a baseline, the town knows that if you want to see your tax burden go down, you need to invest in
Support.
selling some property, establishing a business district. These are the things that are going to bring your tax bracket down, your mill rate down. So I'd like to establish that baseline. I'm happy to kind of take the lead on that and work with whoever in town hall to start doing that. And as it shapes, share it and add to it as you guys see fit.
I think that's great. And perhaps that initial assessment of the business district is definitely a step in that right direction, because he's going to show us, here's where you are. At least my understanding of the whole concept.
Who's doing that?
This is Main Street.
Main Street.
Main Street, okay. And when is that gonna get done?
The assessment, initial assessment is gonna be sometime the second week in May.
That includes all of our businesses?
This is them looking at where we are as of now. So he's asking 85 data points. We answer them. I don't think he's necessarily looking to see, although he may, how many manufacturing businesses do you have? How many of this do you have? Because right now, I don't think that we have the answer. We had gotten a list last year from Scott about, the top taxpayers. But we had asked, where are we going to get this? And that's what Tony's going to be working on for this list of businesses, right?
Well, the list of business, so I'm sure the assessor has that information, right?
I would hope so, yeah.
I would hope, because they're
Right.
paying taxes.
So, I mean, in terms of who's manufacturing and other retail versus, so there is that information probably available to the assessor's office. The list I was working on was more or less for the purpose of communicating to let people know about what's happening with the connectivity project, right? So, again, I don't think we have a list specifically to do that, a mailing per se. So I do have a list that I received that I cleaned up that has the businesses that are, all the businesses from the assessor's office. So I thought that we could look at that, and I do have the list, it does have the assessments,
Great.
or the assessments that the businesses are assessed at this point. So, I mean, we could look at it slice. I think there was like 400 and change businesses. So, I mean, we can look at it by what they're assessed. We could look at it by location, and then possibly do a mailing or do a mailing possibly and have them reach out to us to be included on a list so there could be constant communication. Or we could Google the list, call businesses, the old-fashioned way, who's your best contact at this business, get their email address, get their contact information. So, I mean, I think over time, you have to build a list. It doesn't happen overnight.
But right now, we
But a
have a
mailing
list.
is possible because
But
we
we have
have
a
the
list who
mailing
pays
list.
taxes, right? We have a list who pays taxes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because
That's the
they are,
base, yeah.
they're mailed information for the preliminary budget hearing and the annual town meeting in May. So they get mailed, these businesses get mailed. Some of them are out of town, some of them are in town. So I think we've got to look at how we want to slice it and what we want to look at. And from there, make phone calls. So I did pull the list. I looked at it today, actually. So I don't know who, if you wanted to meet separately about it, or I'm not really sure how we want to
We need
approach
like
it.
a big Excel, we just need to dump data into an Excel file, add a
think
bunch
so.
of things, and then just
Yeah.
start
Right.
sorting, right?
Right.
And
And
that's
start-
a
we gotta- yeah.
document we work off of.
Yeah, we gotta start somewhere, and
Yeah.
that sounds like the list to start.
I don't
with.
think
Yeah.
I have, though, what I don't think I have is the type of business.
That's
We could
okay.
fill-
Well,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
something
that's a
we could
field,
do.
we could fill that in.
We just
Yeah.
need the name of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Every
have it in
business
an
in
Excel spreadsheet right now, and.
Perfect.
Great.
And then I sorted it by state, by street, and then there's the assessment there.
That's great, yeah.
So if you can send that to us, let's say, if you have to clean it up anymore than you already have, if not, if you can send it to us, at your earliest convenience, we can come up with a plan to kind of break it down and say, you're gonna take the first 20, you'll take the next 20, and so on, and then we can come up with just that. I mean, all you have to do is Google it, say,
Right. Yep.
what does ABC do? And we can come up with that, and then there's your starting point.
And then we can add other pertinent tax data for
Yeah.
the town and give the townspeople a story of where we stand today.
Yep.
And where we want to go. And that's how we start filling in the middle,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that's also what Dale had spoken to
Yeah.
us about when
Yeah.
we're looking at, what type of business do we have, right? We're heavy on healthcare, right, with the senior housing, with Coachman's, with Charter, and then we've got, other type of professional businesses that we can look at. But there's the number of them. Mika had sent something out to me, this is maybe a month or two back now, that was listing who the top 5 employers were in town. It was way outdated, and we have to really even look at that and see, where you can maybe look at it by their tax assessment and say, okay, well, here's where this guy's paying X, depending on the type of business. We should say that he may be one of the highest number of employees in the town. But that's another good data point to have. And then go from there, even looking as far as some of this AI stuff, and say, okay, where do these people live? Where are they coming to, coming from and going to afterwards? So it all going to kind of blend in together. And I think it'd be a wonderful place to start. And then when we're coming up with our plan, say, okay, our plan is, or our goal is, we want to reach, you use the number 10%. So if we can reach an increase in 10%, great. And next time we're going to try for 15 or whatever, is something that's somewhat manageable.
Cliff, you said before that, is the town getting high school interns, or are we getting high school interns? How does that work?
The town is getting high school interns.
Could we get one for us?
I don't know how.
And the reason I ask is I work with Lynn. I do an internship for the Amity, and I have a relationship with Lynn, but lists like this and data, that would be awesome for an intern to do.
Yeah.
That's what an intern does.
So, right, that was one of the.
And one of us managing them are kind of, I'd be happy to help do that.
So that was one of my requests, to have an intern to
Okay.
help with build out the business list.
Yeah.
And actually Daniel here is
Daniel.
a high school student who will be working together
Oh,
to
fantastic.
do that.
Yeah.
He starts, I think, May 3rd? 12th, okay, May 12th.
Why so late?
Yeah, exactly, because I feel like we're trying to get things moving.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he was going to help
Okay.
with making those phone calls, but I know you mentioned to split the list here, and maybe, I don't know, I guess part of it is, what is the timing, and what is the timing that we need to reach these businesses? So I know that the 2030 is looking at the connectivity open house to talk about the project that 2030 is working on. And, it would be a real miss if we don't include businesses in that.
Yeah.
So, possibly we just do, again, I don't know the timing because there's some drainings issues that we're trying to figure out, and I think SLR has to let us know about that. The meeting's next week on the 15th. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more. I think Tony Genovese will be giving an update. So, if we need to do a mailing before we could actually start building out the list, maybe that's a possibility. I have a business mailing list to just kind of communicate what's going on.
Right.
Maybe we can't wait for us to clean and scrub and make calls and get the list together. So I guess that's a decision. Maybe Chris Dickerson would want to make a call on that.
I think that they're looking now into June,
into June.
just based on all this other stuff. And I think that that's where Dale's role is supposed to kind of corral all this together, right?
Yeah.
And say, all right, we have to meet this goal by X date.
Right.
So hopefully that's going to be
Right. So if we're just thinking of doing a mailing, that would probably be realistic, because if you're talking about June, you're doing your planning in May, and May's right around the corner.
so that I think is for the mailing. What you guys are doing is great, but taking that list to the next level
Next
for our
level, baseline,
purposes
right.
is what we can do. And if there's when you guys are doing your part. If it's obvious that, you know, Brookside Market is a, you know, produce market, right? And so that's obvious. We can kind of just pencil it
Yeah.
in and go from there.
Or maybe I ask the assessor, maybe we could ask the assessor to give us a list with what she believes that business to be. Right, so that I'm,
She has it, sure.
Yeah,
because she does dump it into categories, so maybe that will be like one step, we could sort it maybe by that as well.
Okay.
And I think I had done some of that work already with Scott, you know, a year ago now, so it might even be, so unfortunately, things get outdated, right? So that might not be the same data anymore, because businesses come and move and things of that nature.
Yeah, so we can get that list that's categorized by the assessor. That'd be great. If she doesn't have it, then we'll just take whatever
We'll build
list
it, yeah.
exists.
Yeah, we'll work with what we have.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Chatty. Okay. Next is public comment. Is there any public comment?
Don't all speak at once.
Public comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, we're moving on. Our next meeting is May the 8th, right here, 6 o'clock. Can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Chatty?
Second?
Scott? All in favor?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
thank you.